are listening once again to an episode of Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. And today we get to really deal with the unexpected. As I tell people oftentimes about the podcast, sometimes we do get to talk about inclusion, and we do that before we talk about diversity, because diversity never includes disabilities. But mostly what we get to talk about is the unexpected, which is anything that doesn't have to do with inclusion or diversity. So mostly we get to do the unexpected today, whatever that may mean. Our guest is Nick Prefontaine. Nick, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad you're here all the way back in Rhode Island, so we have to yell across the country to reach each other, huh?
Absolutely, Michael. However, I've been looking forward to this for a few weeks now. So looking forward to jumping in with you.
Me too. I'm really looking forward to it. And I know we do get to do some unexpected, really neat story things and so on. But why don't we start? Tell us about the early Nick growing up. And I know your story integrates into that at some point, but tell us about the early Nick.
You're setting me right up.
I try.
Right up. So all right. So I was actually at ski club with my friends, or on the way. We all got released a little bit early, so it was super exciting. As I'm sure you can imagine, or your listeners can imagine, when you're in 8th grade, you get released a little bit early. It's always a big deal. It's always a big thing. So whenever we had ski club, we always got released a little bit early. So that was exciting to begin with. And then my friends and I all brought our snowboard gear on the bus to get ready, so we could get the most out of that day as possible as far as runs, and not waste any time once we got to the mountain to get ready. So we got to the mountain. The rest of the class migrated inside to get their ski and snowboard attire on, and we were ready because we were prepared. We got ready on the bus. We headed right for the chairlift, and then going up, we noticed that it was very icy because it had been raining. So people were wiping out everywhere. However, the chairlift went right over the terrain park where all of the jumps were. And I knew as soon as I saw it that I had to go off the biggest jump in the terrain park. I was like, oh yeah, that's got my name all over it. So got to the top, buckled into my snowboard, took a breath of that crisp winter air, and confidently charged towards that jump with all my speed. And then going up to the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard, which threw me off balance. And so I was forced to go off the jump off balance. I've come to learn that at the moment of impact, I had a decision to make, and I got really still. So I'd left my body, and I had two choices. Option one, it's going to be really hard. And once you get through it, you'll be able to help trauma survivors to thrive with the rest of their lives. Or you can move on to the other side. And I chose the really hard path. So once I got to the hospital, they actually, to get me to the hospital, they wanted to bring a helicopter in. However, it was too windy. So they had to send in an ambulance. And out of all the paramedics in the entire county, there was only one who could intubate right in the spot. And I needed that to be able to breathe. And lucky for me, he was one of the paramedics that showed up to the mountain that day. So that's one thing. That's one of the things that contributed to why I'm able to talk to you today and still tell this story. The second one was I had a pair of goggles that I wore. So although I wasn't wearing a helmet, and I later learned that I wasn't wearing a helmet, which I usually did when I went to this particular mountain, I was wearing a pair of goggles, and the goggles that I wore had a lot of padding in them. So not only did they brace my impact as I continued to roll down the mountain and continued to hit my head, the goggles mysteriously moved with each impact to brace each individual impact. So that was the first thing that happened. Paramedics, the right paramedic out of all the ones in the area, that was the second. The third once I got to the hospital, I was out. I was toast. The doctors said that I would have been in a coma for 7 to 10 days at a minimum, just based on the impact alone. However, Michael, I had swelling in my brain, and the doctors were worried that if I woke up and panicked, the swelling would increase and I would have died. So they had to induce me into a coma. And very early on, when I was resting in the intensive care unit, my parents were the only ones, my immediate family, who were allowed in that room. And the doctors came right in front of me, no fault of their own. They were just doing their job, but they came into my room to share the prognosis. And as I'm sure you can imagine, it was not so positive, not so positive, not so positive. Each time they would come into my room where I was in a coma, I was out, albeit, but I was in a coma. So they went to share this with my parents. And right as they started talking, my mom stopped them. And she said, no, no, not in front of him. Because she understood that even though I was in a coma, I wasn't conscious, I was still taking in information, albeit subconsciously or unconsciously. I always confuse those two, still to this day. I always confuse those two. However, because my mom stopped the doctors from sharing that news in front of me, made them step outside the room. Once they got outside the room, that's where they shared with my parents that, look, he's been in a snowboarding accident and he's in a coma. Even if he comes out of his coma, there's a good chance that he's probably not going to be able to walk, talk, or eat on his own again. And because my mom stopped the doctors and didn't let that information get through to me in any way, what it allowed me to do was just get up every day, figuratively and literally, and treat it like any other situation. So a month, I was in the coma, partially induced coma, for 3 weeks. I really don't remember a month because it was a partially induced coma, as I said. So a month after my accident, those are where my synapses and my brain started firing. So those are where my first memories start. And initially, I was transported to the third floor of the rehab hospital in Boston. And that's where I began my journey. The third floor was reserved for the most critical of cases. And that was me at that point. I couldn't walk. I couldn't talk. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't feed myself, couldn't do anything. And the only thing that I could do was sit up in bed for 8 minutes at a time, supported by 3 nurses. And even then, I was sweating profusely like I had just ran a marathon. So it was definitely a long road ahead of me, and I had to build up my strength slowly but surely. And it was right around this time that I started, it was unknowingly that I started to utilize a system, and that's the same system that I teach to this day. In my keynote talks for brain injury associations, and also working one-on-one with individuals that are going through trauma, that's the S.T.E.P system. So, Michael, S.T.E.P is an acronym. It stands for support. Make sure that you have the support of your family and friends right from the beginning. And this is going to have you falling back on relationships that you built prior to your setback. T is trust. Trust that once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be available to you. And this also is about trusting that voice that we all have inside of ourselves. Call it what you want, God, the universe, your inner voice. we all have that voice, but so many of us don't listen to it. So it was very early on in my recovery when I was transported to that rehab hospital in Boston that I started to listen to that inner voice. So this was before I could talk. I was still unable to talk. I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't walk. And I overheard my parents talking and conferring with the doctors, and they would meet them every week to say, all right, so they would, for instance, they would say to the doctors, what do we have to do this week to make sure Nick makes a full recovery? I heard in the back of my head, no, you're going to run out of the hospital. So then running out of the hospital became our common goal and what we were shooting for. So I always like to illustrate that point because that goes right along with trust. You have to trust that voice that you have inside of you. Within support, if I could take a step back, within support, it's important. One of the main things that I talk about in STEP, the ebook, which at the end, I'll give your listeners a way they can download the whole STEP system, STEP, the ebook for free. One of the things I talk about in there is within support is that you have to make sure you have an advocate with you at all times. That advocate for me during the day doesn't have to be. However, for me, it was my parents. So my mom would be with me every day, going to every therapy and doctor's appointment with me. She also had her parents who would join her several days a week to help break it up. Then at night, when it was time at night, my mom would switch off with my dad, and my dad would come in and spend nights with me. The nights that he couldn't be there because he had to travel for work and everything, the nights that he couldn't be there, I would have an uncle, a grandfather, or someone come and spend the night with me as well. So this was so important because I had an advocate with me at all times to really it helped things in that. And I said this is going back, but it's really not going back because it flows right into energy. So maintaining our E is energy. Maintaining our energy allows our body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. Medication has the potential to get in the way of that. So I needed a lot of drugs and medication to be pumped into me, rightfully so, to help keep me alive. Modern medicine saved my life. However, after my accident, I had to make sure that I wasn't just constantly, the doctors or the nurses or the hospital staff wasn't constantly medicating me. And Michael, this also comes right around the time that it was very early on in my recovery, a month after my accident. I always like to share this story because so as I said, my dad or my grandfather, I think it was my grandfather in this case, was spending the night with me. And this was before I could talk. So I got up in the middle of the night and I had to go to the bathroom. So I tried to call his name and get his attention and wake him up. Well, he wouldn't wake up. So I managed to put the hospital bed down and hobble to the bathroom, use the bathroom, and then make it back into bed. Nothing happened. However, the hospital staff found out the next day and they freaked out. They're like, we can't have this liability. He can't be doing this. And what we're going to do before bedtime, we're going to give him this many cc's of this medication, that many cc's of this other medication, and that should calm him down for bedtime so that he's able to sleep and we don't have this happen again. And my mom said to them, no, you're not. Just ask him not to do that again. So they asked me not to do that. And I made sure not to do it again. And I didn't have any problem. However, if I didn't have an advocate with me at all times, the hospital, just to make their jobs easier, I'm not
Yeah.
criticize anyone here. They would have just medicated me.
Yeah.
So, uh, with that, Michael, I will take a deep
So,
breath and see if you have any questions about that.
well, so you have support, trust, energy, and what's the P?
The P, I'm glad you asked, is persistence.
Okay.
So, persistence, once you take your first step, keep getting up every day and taking your next step, no matter how small. By continuing to move forward every day, you are building an unstoppable momentum.
Right.
And they were long days. They were long days for me in the inpatient rehab, in the rehab hospital in Boston. I would get up. I would usually, especially in the beginning, need help. A physical therapist would have to teach me how to shower again. Um, if you can picture that, I had to learn like something as simple as the water comes before the soap. Like when I say I had to relearn everything, I truly mean everything. I had
Yeah.
no memory how to do anything.
Yeah.
So I would have that, then I would have breakfast and then have my first sessions of physical, occupational, and speech therapy. And after which we broke for lunch. And it's really interesting because it was at one of these lunches in between my therapies that I had a moment. Um, this is kind of the only moment that I can point to where I had any doubt. Um, and I always like to illustrate this because we all have doubts. We're human, me included in that. So I was in a wheelchair and I had my lunch in front of me. And after I finished lunch, I was just looking over my situation in the wheelchair and everything. And I turned to my mom and I said, am I ever going to be able to walk again?
Mm.
And she goes, of course you are. That's what we're doing here. So you can get everything back and we can go home. So what this allowed me to do is one, have the confidence that, oh, okay, all right, good. It was like a lapse for me.
Yeah.
And it just allowed me to keep going and keep taking that next step.
So let's go back to the original injury. So the injury for you, did you have broken bones or anything, or was it primarily just a brain injury?
Yeah, I actually joke about this because people say, "Oh my God, you must have had a broken arm, broken leg." I drank a lot of milk.
Mm.
I loved cereal at the
Yeah.
time, so I didn't have any broken bones. I just had a traumatic brain
Traumatic
injury.
brain injury. Right.
Yeah.
So when you essentially went out of your body, you realized you had two choices. Was anyone talking to you? Did you hear a voice that helped you realize you had one of two choices to make, or how did that? What happened?
So that's actually, I'm glad you asked that question because that's actually something that I wasn't conscious of. I didn't know in the moment, and I didn't even know that years into the future. It was only within the last few years that I've been working one-on-one with one of my coaches. I have several coaches, but one of my coaches, I really term her, or I describe her as an energy coach.
Mm-hmm.
She really helps me get quiet and work through things, whatever I'm dealing with. That was one of the things when we were going deep within that we were able to uncover because she reflects back to me what she's picking up in my field.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things that we were able to uncover. I don't have a conscious memory on that, but Joy was the one that was able to reflect that back to me. That's what happened. So I don't have a conscious memory of that. However, it came back to me that that's what happened.
So as you were recovering, did you have a voice inside you that was talking with you that you communicated with? Did you have discussions, or did a voice direct you, or what?
No, other than that voice in the back of my head that, and it was a pretty strong voice at the time. It was, no, you're going to run out of the hospital.
Got it.
That was really my guiding force throughout my recovery.
Okay.
And really what I was working towards every day, which it was part of my motivation for getting up every day, doing that, doing the physical, occupational, and speech, then having lunch. And then I didn't finish that thought. I actually, after lunch, went back to therapy. I had double sessions. So I had, again, physical, occupational, and speech therapy. And then even after that, I would be doing extra weights, extra exercises and routines that were going to help me get to my common goal, which was running out of the hospital. And when I say we, myself and my parents, made sure that everyone, my therapist, nurses, doctors, they all knew my goal, which was to run out of the hospital. So we asked them, what are the extra exercises that Nick can be doing that's going to get him to his common goal of running out of the hospital faster? So if you fast forward a little bit, Michael, I was in my conscious memories is I was in inpatient rehab in the rehab hospital for a little less than 60 days. And a little less than 60 days, I realized my common goal, which was running out of the hospital. And after running out of the hospital, it wasn't like my work was done. I had to continue to go to outpatient therapy for physical, occupational, and speech therapy, albeit not double sessions, but I had to do that physical, occupational, and speech therapy 5 days a week, along with being tutored all summer long in order to continue on to high school with the rest of my classmates.
Were you
And
able? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say looking back on it, it's a little surreal, but it was only 18 months after finishing my rehab, recovering from my snowboarding accident and being in a coma for 3 weeks and having to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again, that I got my start in real estate. And that was because I picked up a book off of my dad's shelf in his library that was Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kawasaki. Now, I grew up in a family real estate, like a real estate family. My dad was a builder when I was younger, then he was a realtor, then an investor, and then all throughout my life, he was always in real estate, always doing something. So I picked up that book in a summer, only 18 months after I finished my outpatient rehab. And at the time he had a real estate investment company. And I approached him and I said, all right, I want to help. I want to get started. This book really has me thinking. So it was right around this time that when I approached him, it was right before I got my driver's license. It was right as I was getting my driver's license. So right around that time, they were playing with the idea of having bird dogs go and knock on pre-foreclosure doors, or in other words, homeowners that have received the notice of default letter from the bank, meaning that they have missed a few payments all the way up to, 10 or 12 payments, and the bank still hadn't foreclosed on the home. So I would get, in the beginning, when I first started this, I had no formal training. They just said, hey, here, you go to this website to find out where these are. Then you knock on the door and you say this script. Then if no one's home, you leave this letter. So that was pretty much the direction that I got. So I had to go to school during the week because I was only 16. Unfortunately, I would have liked to be working the whole time, but I had to go to school. So the only times that I had to do this was on the weekends, and I would pick one day per week, either a weekend or a holiday. And I would go and knock on these doors. And in the beginning, like I said, I received no training. So I had a script and a leave behind to leave. And I would try to set up meetings for our investor to meet with them about the following week about potentially buying their home. However, in the beginning, I didn't see a lot of success. I got a lot of doors, as you can imagine, slammed in my face because I had no strategy, no tact whatsoever. I would basically rush up to the door and say, "Hey, hi, I'm Nick Prefontaine with Prefontaine. I forget even what the company was called at the time. I'm here to help you out of your unfortunate situation." And as you can imagine, I get a lot of doors slammed in my face. Um, and rejection is not a bad thing. I was just able to learn from that. So then shortly after starting, my dad sent my cousin Mike and I out to California to shadow the number one person in the country that was having success with these notice of default doors, door knocking, these people. And once I saw him and how his strategy, how much nuance and like how scripted every part of his routine was, I was like, oh my God, a light bulb went off. Because he was like going up, knocking on the door, doing a light, friendly knock, like just a neighbor from down the road. Then he would take a few steps back, they'd answer the door, say, "Hey, not sure I have the right address. Uh, can you confirm something for me?" And he would show them his clipboard. And once they saw their name on the list, they would light up and just tell him what happened, what they were doing to fix the situation. Or let's be candid, it was 2006, 2007. So what they weren't doing about the situation. And it really made things easier. And then he was able to book follow-up meetings for the following week. So once I saw that, I instituted that once I got home, and then I started seeing a lot of success. And in these areas, in these cities where I door knocked during high school, we owned properties for years, even after I graduated high school. And then after I got out of high school, I started studying to get my real estate license. And I got my real estate license, a pretty great time to get your real estate license, March of 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone that was around during that time knows that the financial markets and everything was kind of coming down during that time and crashing. And it was interesting, Michael. The first pre-licensing course that I went to take, or the first time rather, I'm sorry, that I went to take my test to get my real estate license, there were, because I didn't pass it on the first time. It took me a few times, but so the first time I went, there's probably 25 people in the room with me taking the test. The second time I went, only a few weeks later, there was really like 10, maybe closer to 15. And the third time that I went and took it, because it took me 3 times to pass my real estate licensing test, they there was one other person in the room. There was one other person in the room. So as you can imagine, it was a sign of the times for sure. And I was a realtor for a full-time realtor, helping buyers and sellers for 6 years. Like that was my primary and only source of income. Then in 2014, my dad approached me about, he was an investor and he was buying homes, like acquiring homes creatively. So without signing personally for loans, or without using big investor down payments or any of his money. So he is acquiring them creatively. Just to name a few, with with owner financing. So if they didn't have any debt on the property, He would buy the home with owner financing and make principal only payments. A second way that he was acquiring them was he would close on them subject to their existing loan. And I'm just trying to keep it high level, keep it basic. The third way is if there was a loan, like for instance, if there was a loan in place, he would buy it with just a lease purchase agreement. And in all cases, taking over responsibility for maintenance, repair, and upkeep over the duration of his agreement. And they were usually anywhere from 3 to 5 years. And then once he got that, he came to me and said, hey, would you be able to help me with the marketing of these properties? Because I'm getting all these deals, I'm getting all these properties under contract, and I can't do two things at once. So I can't continue to get properties and market the property. So will you be able to help me with the marketing of the properties? And I was reluctant at first, but I finally came around to the idea that I could help him right alongside my business as being a realtor. And marketing all the properties turned into, oh shoot, now we need help with handling all the buyer inquiries and the interest that's being generated off this marketing. Will you be able to help me with the buyers and fielding all the buyer calls and inquiries and everything like that? So then over the course of 13 months, my income shifted where I was maybe making 5 or 10% with him as an investor, and 90% of my income was coming as a realtor. Over 13 months, because of the evolution of the business, my income shifted where it didn't even make sense for me to keep my license. And in January of 2016, after I received my last commission check, I let my real estate license go and joined him full-time as an investor, and working one-on-one with the buyers. That has morphed into working with not only doing our deals and our properties, it also encapsulates working with associates that we have all over the country to do these same types of creative deals. So buying homes with low or no money down and then exiting them on a rent-to-own agreement. So that's what's really developed in the process, and it's pretty exciting. And then if I could take a step back, because during that time frame, so if you go back to 2012, Michael, I developed an issue with my voice, and I couldn't really figure out what was going on. And I would go to I went to my what is it called? Primary care physician. And he checked me out, evaluated me, did a full physical on me. He's like, no, I don't see anything wrong. You're fine. And I was like, something's not right. So I kept looking, and I kept being referred. I went to an allergist, kept being referred to these different doctors. But a year after looking for answers, I was finally referred to, let me take a drink here. I was finally referred to a voice specialist in Boston at Mass Pioneer. His name was Dr. Song, and there are only 35 of these voice specialists in the country or on the continent. I was confused the two, but I think in the country there are only 35 of these voice specialists. And after looking for almost a year for an answer and no one able to give me an answer, I was so blown away that immediately Dr. Song walked into the room, heard me speak, and right away nonchalantly goes, oh, that? Yeah, we deal with it all the time. Go to the front desk and get scheduled for a Botox injection in a couple of weeks. And if there was a camera on me, Michael, my mouth was like on the floor. I was absolutely blown away, because here I was I had all this anxiety built up, and I was like, I don't know. I don't like that word. I had all this worry. Uh Not worry. It was I'm looking for the word. It's
Anxiety.
I I I just don't love that word. I don't know. It
Yeah.
was I had all this like pent up. I was just looking everywhere and I couldn't get an answer. So it could be anxiety. I'm not sure.
Or concern, but yeah.
Concern. Yeah, so I was just like melted. I like melted off me when he did that because um it put me so at ease. And
So what was the issue?
it was I had a lot of tension in my throat. It was basically like it was hard to get the words out. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how I would sound. But to me, I felt fine inside. So I was like, oh, I don't get why my voice is sounding like that.
So what did
So,
the Botox do?
well, what it did, I actually can relate this back to my accident because during my recovery from my accident and having to learn how to talk again, I knew what I wanted to say up here. It was clear as a bell up here. Then I just couldn't get the words out. Like
Mm-hmm.
they just couldn't come. Whereas then this was a little bit different. Same thing. I knew what I wanted to say. It was clear in my head. However, just coming out, I just couldn't get the words out.
Right.
And what it was um, they don't know. He didn't want to label it. He said he doesn't want to put a label on it because in all my research and looking for answers and everything, I really resonated with something in a community, a group called I'm sorry, Dysphonia International. And at the time they were called National Spasmodic Dysphonia Association. So spasmodic dysphonia is like it basically it's just a voice issue.
Okay.
Uh, so now that it's worked its way out of my system, I don't even know if it's that or if it's a combination of that with muscle tension. Because for me now it's out of my system. As you can tell here, I've been doing quite a bit of talking, and there's no issue. So I fortunately don't have an issue with my voice anymore. And the last Botox injection I had to receive was February 13th of 2020.
Okay.
So
So that's
whatever.
been over 4 years, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. So you had clearly a very serious injury. How did that injury affect you in terms of what you do and the commitment to do what you do and how you feel about the world?
Ooh, I love the question. So there has always been this voice in the back of my head. So after I ran out of the hospital and went through all my outpatient rehab and really once I finished and graduated high school, I've always kind of had this voice in the back of my head that's been telling me that whatever I'm being successful in, whether it's sales, real estate, anything, that voice has always been saying, yeah, that's great. But what you really need to be doing is helping individuals through their trauma and to be able to thrive with the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I've really always kind of unknowingly, unconsciously gravitated towards people that have had a setback or a life challenge. And it's been for the fact that whenever something happens, whether it's an accident or a sudden illness or a sudden health thing that sets people back, anyone who knows me and my story, they always say, "Oh, have you talked to Nick?" you have to talk to Nick. And I've always helped them through their trauma, their life challenge or trauma, and help them get through and then thrive with the rest of their lives. And I've throughout the years, Michael, I've always unknowingly, unconsciously shared this step system with them to help them realize just that, to get through their trauma and thrive with the rest of their lives.
Well,
Wasn't until a little bit late, more recently. So it was back in September of 2019 that someone approached me, and I've been fortunate. I've had the ability, because of our real estate coaching and mentoring business that I have with my family, with my dad and my brother-in-law, that I've always had the opportunity to do a little speaking, tell my story from stage at our events. And we've been having events since 2016. So I've always been blessed where I've at least had that opportunity to get up and share my story. However, that's only been 15, maybe 20, maybe the max would be 25 minutes that I've been able to share my story. Then someone who saw me speak at our event, our QLS event, we call it the QLS Quantum Leap Systems event, in September. And we have another one coming up here in September. But someone that saw me speak in 2019 at that approached me, and she said, "I love your story. Love the way that you shared it. If you're ever looking to fine tune your message and bring it to another level, so you're able to impact and affect the most amount of people possible, let me know, and I can introduce you to a few mentors and coaches and speaker bureaus and help you get started." She made it clear she wasn't trying to steal me away from my dad or our family business. But if I ever wanted to explore that. So at the time I was still going through the final throes of my voice issue. As I said, the last treatment that I got was February 13th of 2020. And I still wasn't ready. I still had a few more hurdles to go through, a few more injections to get, and I wasn't ready. However, I always held on to her card, and I finally reached out to her in May of 2021. Then I said, all right, I'm ready. Who should I talk to? How do I get started? About that offer that you offered me 18 months ago. And she introduced me to Trisha, Trisha Brooke, who's become a friend and mentor of mine. And ever since she made that introduction, and I had that first call with Trisha 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, there has been no voice in the back of my head, Michael. So what that's evidence of to me is that I'm doing exactly what I was put on this earth to do.
well, and so do you still do real estate, or are you now doing more coaching and so on and speaking full time?
So I'm still involved in I have the good fortune, I have the ability to do both. I'm still doing real estate, and also, and this is interesting about the time frame, not to say kind of, whoa, look at me. Really, this is just to share the kind of the importance and how far a mentor or a coach can take you. That's why I like to share this story. So as I said, I only spoke for maybe 15, 20, maybe 25 minutes max before I before I met Trisha. And now I give keynotes to brain injury associations and other organizations that support people that are going through trauma, whether it's a trauma, life challenge, or otherwise. I give 45, 50, and 60-minute keynotes. Whereas before her, I was only speaking for 15, 20, 25 minutes max. So
Mm-hmm.
I always like to share that because it just drives a point home, the importance of a mentor.
Right. Well, so you teach the STEP system. How do you do that? What is the process to teach that? Because it seems very intellectual and so on. But so how do you teach STEP?
So STEP is really, it's about applying the STEP system. So within STEP, there's a bunch of different bullet points, if you will, about like one of those for support is make sure that you have your advocate right from the beginning. And this doesn't necessarily have to be a family member. That's why people always hear the word family and they try to latch onto that. It can be anyone. It can be a neighbor. It can be a coworker that's always been there, always been around, and looking to help you out.
But it has to be someone who will be an advocate.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Someone who's around, always looking to help you. So that's one of the things I talk about within STEP, and it's really, as far as the STEP system, it's really helping them to apply the STEP system to their life and their situation. Now, I do have one thing, which is in addition, now the ebook STEP, which is going to teach you, I'll give you at the end, STEP, the ebook. Going to teach you all about support, trust, energy, and persistence. That's free. And that's really a great way to take your first step today. Then after you go through that, if you're looking to kind of bring it to another level, I have STEP, the video course, and that's only $37. And what that entails is for each letter, so support, trust, energy, and persistence, for each letter, there's a coaching video from me that's going to walk you through how you go about applying the STEP system to your life, your setback, your trauma, your situation, and allow you to move forward. Each letter also comes with a workbook and coaching videos and emails from me, which is going to have me continually in your corner. So that's really the steps. It's the free, no pun intended. It's that's kind of the process is the ebook, then STEP, the video series, which is only $37. Then after you go through that, then we can, if you're still interested in working together, we can jump on the phone to kind of uncover and discuss what it would be like working together one-on-one. And I usually do one-on-one clients for either 3 or 6 months, depending on your situation.
You started something called Common Goal. Tell us about that.
Common Goal is, all right, so really everything that I've been able to kind of uncover from my recovery, and that includes the STEP system, was because of my mentor, Trisha, pulling it out of me when we worked one-on-one together. So if I can take you back, I know I talked about since I had that first initial call with Trisha, I told you that there's been no voice in the back of my head. Well, how that call went, I shared my goals with her and the impact that I was looking to make with her. And I said, do you think that's possible? And she said, absolutely. I said, okay, what do you recommend? She said that I recommend the speaker salon. which is, and I said, what's a speaker salon? She said, well, you commute to New York City for 6 weeks in a row. So for 5 weeks, you get to work on your 8 to 10 minute talk. And then on the 6th week, you perform it in front of influencers, decision makers, event organizers, TEDx organizers, people who can book you to speak. So that's what I think. That's what she told me she thought I should do. I said, all right, well, what is that? And she said, that's 25,000. I said, yeah, yes, absolutely. And I made the commitment right there, and that I wanted to do that because I saw it was a wholehearted yes for me, and it was a wholehearted yes because I knew it was part of my path, part of my calling to be able to tell my story from stage in front of individuals, and also help individuals that are going through trauma. So I said yes, did that, completed that. Then during the speaker salon, Michael, she approached me and said that she works one-on-one with individuals to help them build out their speaker platform. And I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know what a speaker platform was. I didn't even know what that meant. However, from my experience working with her for several weeks in the speaker salon, I just knew this was what I wanted. And what I wanted was to continue to get her brain and her thoughts on myself and my situation so I can impact and affect individuals. So I said yes. She said that's 75,000. I said, okay, well, you're gonna have to give me a week to kind of figure out where I'm gonna get the money for that. So I didn't have 75,000 underneath my mattress. So what I did, I went and applied for financing, and 6 days later, I ended up sending her the funds. She was the one that helped me to launch Common Goal. So in January of 2022, working one-on-one with her was a 6 or 7 month contract. That was our one-on-one work together. I would have a call with her once every 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. And she was the one that really helped me launch Common Goal and uncover the STEP system, Michael. As I was saying, she pulled it out of me to the point where she was asking me, all right, so you got in a snowboarding accident and then you ran out of the hospital. How'd you do it? I said, I don't know. I did it. I got up every day and just kept working every day until I got to where I wanted to go. And she goes, no, not good enough.
Yeah, I agree with her.
How'd you do it? So she kept asking me, I think it went 7 or 8 layers deep, her asking me, how did I do it? To a point, Michael, where I was so frustrated. I was like, I don't know. Stop asking me that question. And what came out of that, though, was the STEP system.
Mm-hmm.
So the STEP system is what I teach to this day. And she also helped me to write several keynote talks, which, as I share with you, I'm now delivering for brain injury associations and other associations that support individuals that are going through trauma. So I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, without that introduction 3 years ago, from Sharon Spano was the one that introduced me to Trisha. I wouldn't be, or who knows how long it would have taken me, or
Sure.
if I'd be where I am today. So I'm very fortunate of that.
So what is Common Goal? Is it an organization? Is it, what is it?
Yeah, it's my company.
Okay.
So we support individuals who are going through trauma. to thrive with the rest of their lives. Very simply put. And as I said, I'm doing a lot of speaking at brain injury associations and other associations that are supporting individuals that are going through trauma, sharing the STEP system, spreading the message, and also then that what comes out of that is working one-on-one with individuals
Got it.
to thrive with the rest of their lives.
Are you able to do that virtually, or is it only in person, or how does that work?
That's a great question. So there is nothing like being in person
Sure.
and dealing with someone one-on-one. However, the nature of the world, you can't you can't be there in person and flying around just to meet with people one-on-one. So it is something that can be done virtually. However, interspersed in there, I love there to be a person, if at all possible, a personal touch. That's always my preference. And if there's some way we're meeting, we meet up somewhere, there's some way that we can meet face to face and really develop that personal connection.
That's cool. So, um, I agree. It's always nice to be able to do things in person. It's so much better. But the value of the world today, if you're able to do it, is to doing things virtually gives you the potential to teach to a wider, I don't want to say audience, because I think a lot of the teaching is probably one-on-one, but to a wider um, group of people. But it's really exciting that you're doing it, and none of it would have happened if you hadn't gone through the injury. And I wonder if it would have happened if you had had a helmet on back at the injury.
This is always this is not a what should we call it? This isn't something I talk about all the time. However, what the doctor said, obviously a helmet versus not a helmet. Like a helmet,
Mm-hmm.
you always say, yeah, helmet's better for you. However, the doctor said that because of the force with which my head hit the ice, that they don't even know how much difference a helmet would have
Yeah.
made.
But the
Because
goggles made a big difference.
it would have, yeah, absolutely. It would have split right their opinion. I mean, who knows? Like, I don't know. We don't know. However, if I were to have the choice, I'd like a helmet,
Well,
as opposed to not having one. So I'm a huge advocate of helmets, like helmet safety. I just
sure.
that's a little that's not something I talk about. Little known fact. I talk
That's
about the
okay. So
yeah.
what was it like? I'll ask this, and we've been doing this a while, but what was it like running out of the hospital?
It was I can go right back to that day.
Mm-hmm. I'll bet you can.
So it was April 24th, 2003. And on that day, I went to there was a pizza. There was a pizza shop right next door to the hospital. So we walked. I had several goals. So running out of the hospital was the main goal. However, the food goal, like so I could swallow,
Right.
um, was a Coke and a grinder.
There you
So
go.
Coke because it was a soda and the bubbles irritate your throat. So it's not something you think about. However, it wasn't like the soda was free flowing in the hospital. So that was always a goal of mine, a Coke and a grinder for those non-New Englanders out there, was a sandwich,
Yeah.
like
Sub sandwich.
yeah, like a turkey sandwich. So that was always my goal. I actually think it might have been a meatball, but well, I digress. I digress. So I remember that day I walked over next door to the hospital with my physical therapist and my mom. And I can see the pizza shop, like walking in the door and getting that aroma and ordering and just realizing my goal. And then after that, I ran, after we came out from having lunch, I ran across the parking lot, diagonally, and I raced my physical therapist who was running backwards. I raced her. I don't even remember who won, but as you can see, that's a really vivid memory for me. That
Sure.
was um oh, it was amazing. And like I shared, it wasn't like my work was done. I had to, continue to work. But that was a big day for sure.
Well, Nick, this has been remarkable in a lot of ways and definitely inspiring. And clearly, you are an unstoppable person by any standard. And I'm glad that we got to have this connection and we got to talk about this and you tell the story. I think it's an important story. Um, I keep thinking about your parents who were, as you point out, very strong advocates. I had the same situation. Because when it was discovered I was blind, my parents were told to send me off to a home, and my parents refused. And it was because of their advocacy that I developed the attitudes that I did about life. And clearly, that is very much the same for you. Whether it was your parents or you had probably a larger support system in a lot of ways than I did initially, but still, the bottom line is that you had the advocates, and that is extremely important. And I agree with you that anytime any of us are different or are facing any kind of situation, having advocates is extremely important. And it's always good to find advocates to be part of our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%.
Well, I want to thank you for being here with us. We did an hour without a lot of difficulty, just like I said we would, and just like we talked about. So I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank everyone for listening. Nick's story is incredible and amazing in so many ways, and clearly unstoppable. So you mentioned the ebook. Tell me about how people can get that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we covered here was really just a 10,000 foot view of the STEP system. Um, if they go to, or when they go to nickprefontaine.com/step.
And spell Prefontaine if you would.
Yeah, sure. I'll spell the whole thing.
Okay.
It's NICKPREFONTAINE .com/step STEP. They can download the whole STEP system for free. And in that, they're going to learn all about support, trust, energy, and persistence. And as I was saying earlier, it's a great first step, and they're going to be able to, that will allow them to take that first step today.
And if they want to then follow up and reach out to you and learn from you and so on, how do they do that?
They can also, there's a contact button on the website.
Okay.
Well, right from the website, they should be able to do that. But like I was sharing earlier, the steps would be to go through. I keep saying that.
Okay.
Would go through STEP the ebook, then do STEP the video series, the video course, and then after you've gone through those, so we're speaking the same language, then we can hop on the phone to determine what our work would be like together one-on-one.
And I'm assuming in the ebook, it also gives the contact information to reach out and go further.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. It's all included.
Well, super. Well, Nick, thank you very much for being here. And I want to thank all of you who are listening. And if you're on YouTube watching, we really appreciate you being here and allowing us to invite you in to be part of our family, and we want to become part of yours. I would really love it if any of you who would do so would give us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening to us. We appreciate and value your ratings very highly. I'm sure that Nick would love to hear from you, and he is giving you ways to reach out to him. So please do that. For me, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me through email easily at Michael, Michaelhi, at accessibe, ACCESSIBE.com. So michaelhi at accessibe.com, or go to www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. And that's michaelhingson.com/podcast. And you can listen to all of our episodes if you're not listening to us somewhere else. But we would really love your thoughts and your opinions. Nick, for you and all of you listening, if you know of anyone else who we ought to have on as a guest on Unstoppable Mindset, please let us know. Bring them on, introduce us. We're always looking for guests. So I really value getting to meet more people. As I love to tell people, if I'm not learning at least as much as anybody else who comes on the podcast, I'm not doing my job well. And I've had the value and the joy of getting to learn from so many people like Nick. So please let us know if you have any guests. We'd love to hear from you. So again, Nick, thank you very much. We really appreciate you being here. This has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate your time, and we hope that you'll come back again and visit.
Thanks, Michael. I had a blast, and I can't wait to do it again.